This conference will now be recorded.
Hi guys, good evening to everyone. Today we are going to talk about object-oriented programming. In the last session we had completed discussing functions. So far we have completed discussing different functional programming. We have discussed about all the language fundamentals, and after that we had seen functions, and then we had discussed about different types of functions and different variations of functions. Actually in Scala we have different variations in functions, very important to learn. In that way, we have discussed all the different concepts so far related to functional programming in depth actually. Okay, now once after doing all that, and we had discussed about case something like switch case. Okay, that is a match statement which generally we can apply with the match, which is used to implement some kind of pattern matching. Okay, also we had seen that we had seen very in-depth analysis about it, like how to apply on different types of data types, both value types and reference types. We had discussed all that stuff, and definitely I think you should have a clear analysis so far, right? And we have done many more programs in that process. We have discussed so many examples while doing all this stuff so far. Around we have solved around some 50 to 100 examples so far, isn't it? So now in this session I am going to discuss about object oriented programming. So what is object oriented programming? It's simple. If any language has certain features, such language is called object oriented programming. Something like if you look at like this, something like object, class, abstraction, encapsulation, inheritance, polymorphism, message passing, dynamic binding, all these features. When you talk about all these features, this comes under object oriented programming. And if any language has these features, and we call it as a OOP, like Java, C Sharp, Scala, C++, Python, any language. If any language has these features, we call it as OOP. And few languages doesn't support polymorphism and inheritance. Such languages we call it as object-based languages, like scripting languages, JavaScript, VB script. All these are object-based languages where you don't have polymorphism there and inheritance. But it has object and class concepts. Still, that is there. So I hope this is clear for all of you, right? That is simple idea about OOP, object-oriented programming. Now, let's start discussing about what is an object and what is a class. When you talk about an object, see, there are two definitions we should discuss here. One is general definition, the other one is a technical definition. When you talk about general definition, object means it's simple, it's very easy to understand. It's something like person, place, or a thing. Whatever you see and whatever you touch, whatever you feel, that is an object. So when you talk about an object is a person, place or a thing. That's what we call an object. That is general definition. We don't need to worry too much about it. What is technical definition? An object is instance of a class. Object is what? Instance. Instance means it is something which allocates memory, and without object, it's not possible to allocate memory for variables and methods. Such variables and methods we call it as instance variables and instance methods. You got it right? So, object is instance of a class, and the purpose of that is it allocates memory. Instance of a class which allocate memory. You understand this now? Memory for what? Instance variables and methods. I'll explain this when we go to the topic. Okay, you understand this now? That is one more important thing. That is technical definition. I will elaborate it, how it's an object, and how memory is allocated for object, how instance variables are stored, and how instance methods are applied on this object. We'll discuss. I think this is clear, right? Then after that, we have to talk about two things when we discuss an object. Object has properties and actions. What is that? Object has, first thing, it has properties and it has actions. So when you talk about properties, properties are something like, like name, age, color, height, weight. You can have so many, like, depends on object. This properties changes, or we can call them as attributes. Color, then height, weight. You have so many like this, okay? Height, weight, etc. You can keep adding so many. For each object, there will be certain attributes. And the purpose of these properties or attributes are to identify the object, okay? If you want to identify object or something, like example, you take person. I want to identify a person. How do I identify a person? Person has name, person has color, person has weight, person has a height, person has age. Based on this, I identify a person, isn't it? Or not? Similarly, you take an example of animal. Suppose I take elephant. Elephant name, elephant color, elephant type, elephant location where we can find it. You got it right. Based on that, I can understand what that object is. Okay, so properties helps us to find object. What object is that? Okay, then what about actions? Actions are methods, or they are used to implement functionality. They are behaviors. Action is nothing but a behavior. Okay, behavior means like, what actually we should implement within this. That is represented with the action. You got it right. So generally, action represents functionality or a behavior. Okay, and we talk more about it when we discuss about programming, this object and class example. But already we had discussed functions or methods in the functional programming, where we didn't use classes and classes so far. Of course, object thing we might use, because I told you one thing: everything is an object in Scala, right? So even your functions are objects. You understand more about that once we start discussing this OOP, object oriented programming. Okay. So folks, you got clarity, right? Already we have idea about functions. Functions means something like, parameterized default, and we had seen lambda functions, and we had seen partially applied functions. Okay, and we had seen optimized functions. In that way, we have seen different types of functions in Scala. Okay, it's nothing but the same thing we use here, but so far we have declared functions in object actually. If you remember, we have declared inside the construct, object construct, but from now we are going to use the functions inside a class. If you want, you can declare functions inside object construct. That's your choice. Okay, but already we know what's function. Generally, we represent actions with functions. That's nothing but a behavior which represents what has to be done on an object. That is decided with action. Is it clear, or should I explain more? I think if I explain more, you feel boring, right? Am I right, Vijay, Lavanya, Suresh, Harish, all of you? I don't think you have such an issue, huh? Hmm. Next one. Generally, in programming, of course, object has properties and actions. But if you want to describe about these properties and actions, then we use variables to declare properties. How do you declare properties? Variables are used to declare properties. Already we know about variables, right? And also, second thing, we use methods or functions to declare actions. Okay, what do you use? We use something like methods or functions. Generally, if you declare a function inside a class, people call it as a method, but usually we can call it as function. That's your choice. Whether you want to call it as a method or whether you want to call it as a function, that's your choice. Methods or functions are used to declare actions. Are you following, folks? So this is a simple idea about an object. Now one more thing. In programming, there is one thing. If you want to declare anything, if you want to declare object in program, then it has a syntax. We should know the syntax. So far, we have learned so many syntaxes. I hope you are really good with all that stuff right now. So what is the syntax of an object? It's something like this. Some reference name equal to new class name. That's how you have defined. You should define object in Scala. You create object for a class, and it has to be named after class. That is very important, and you should have a keyword new here. I will explain this. Nothing to worry about it. Okay. Is it clear? For example, if there is a class called person, then I should create object like this, some p equal to new person. That reference name is your choice. It's a variable. You can name as you like. Whatever the variable name you want, you can use it. But the right side object part, it has to be fixed actually. Always there should be a new keyword, and also you should use what is that a class name. Whatever the class you have declared, and if you are creating object for that class, then the object should be declared with that class name. Okay. Whatever the name of the class you have declared, the same name you have to use in object. You cannot use something else. If tree is something and fruit can't be something else. Okay. You got clarity here, right? Just an example. Okay. So this is idea about object. Still we'll discuss more when we discuss about the program. Now let's talk about what is a class. A class is what is this class? So now we had discussed about object. So what is object? Object has properties, object has actions. Now the question is, where do you declare these actions and properties, or where do you declare these variables and functions of an object? That is where we need classes. So class is something which is used to describe object. So if I should describe object, then definitely I need a class. So class describes about object. So inside this class, we should declare variables of object, we should declare actions of object or methods of object. That's how we should describe object. So that's why we call class as a blueprint of an object. Okay, you understand this? What do we call? We call object as, class as blueprint of an object. So what is there inside class? Class has variables and methods of an object. That's all. Point is, a class is useful to us only when you create an object. Okay, so the purpose of class is it's just a blueprint for object. And without class you cannot create object. If you should create object, first class must exist. Understand this? Understand this? Okay. So let's add these points here. Class describes about object. Okay. What it describes here? It describes about variables of object, methods of object. That is properties and actions of an object. That is about properties and actions of object. Okay, next one. Also we can call class is also called blueprint of an object. These are all general definitions. Okay. Technical definition is class is collection of what is that variables and methods. Okay. This is technical definition. Is this clear for all of you folks? Then the syntax for class. Everything has syntax and class has a syntax. The syntax of class look like this, something like this, something like class space some class name, opening bracer. Inside that we have to define some variables. And these variables we call them as instance variables actually. After that, second thing is we can define methods. And these methods we call it as instance methods. Okay. So there is nothing like static variables and static methods here. There is no static keyword in Scala. Maybe if you ask me how you manage to declare something like class variables and class methods, we'll discuss that point a little later. First understand this clearly. Okay. Then I'll explain about how if you want to declare static members and static methods, static variables and methods. Is it possible or is it not? We'll discuss later. This is not right time for that. Is it clear now? So this is syntax: class space, class name, variables, methods. Of course, you can use access modifiers like in Java. I'll explain that. Like public, private, protected. We don't have default here. Maybe if I am explaining using these names, you don't need to worry about it. I will explain everything in detail just in information's sake, I'm giving you prior information. If you want, you can accept that information. Otherwise, you can skip that, avoid that, ignore it. Understood or not? Nothing happens. You don't need to come up with a question. What is that private? What is that protected? What is access modifier? Of course, our mind asks n number of questions. You don't need to worry about it. Okay. You just remember this. Just follow me blindly. Definitely, within a couple of sessions, you can clearly understand what exactly is that. Okay. So you got idea about object. You got idea about class. Class means it's something like this class name. We should use a keyword class, and then we should use class name. Inside that, we should define variables and methods. It should have a body like this. Clear, right? Suppose I want to declare a class for some. You can choose your choice, some book. Okay. So generally, when I talk about book, this is name of my class, and you should follow simple standard naming standards for this class name. Generally, when you declare a name in Scala or in Java, because Scala follows Java, you can see here every word starting letter has to be uppercase. If you see the syntax itself, I am following this naming standard right from syntax itself. Can you see this? C is uppercase, N is uppercase. That talks a lot about that. Okay. So whenever we talk about naming standard, what is that? Naming standard of class is every word starting letter has to be uppercase. Suppose don't use any spaces. What are the rules we had discussed for variables? Almost they are applied for any identifier. No spaces, no special symbols in a class name. Okay. So except underscore and dollar also is permitted. Okay, clear, right? Naming standard. Every word starting letter has to be uppercase. Okay. Suppose if it is a method follows something like this. It is class. For class, every word starting letter has to be uppercase. For example, before going to talk about method, I'll give an example. Something like book demo. Okay. Something like car details. Something like this. It's your choice. Okay. So when you talk about a class, it has to follow a naming standard like this. Suppose if it is a method, how to define methods or functions in Scala? Generally, it follows again naming standard of classes. Java. Here, starting word has to be uppercase. Starting word is lowercase is lowercase, and after that, every word starting letter has to be uppercase, and after that, or every inner word, it will be more simple here. Starting letter must be uppercase or capital letters if you don't know what is uppercase. Okay, clear, right? For example, something like this: get data, put data, set data. You can name as many as possible. Okay, I hope by now you are very comfortable, right? You have good knowledge on methods or functions. Only thing is I should make you understand how to apply those functions inside a class. That's all. You know how to prepare a simple curry. You know about ingredients. Only thing is how to group all that inside class. That I should explain, because you know how to declare variables by now. You know how to declare methods by now. I mean functions. You have played a lot of functions. You have tried to work with that functions a lot. You have done lot of examples. So by that, what I can tell you, you are very much good with all the basics and fundamentals. If you are good with that, writing this, methods, classes, or variables, nothing. It's nothing. Okay. So that's simple idea here about methods. Clear, right? Naming standard of method is that. Of course, I don't need to explain what is a function to you, right? Still, if you have confusion, go to my previous videos. Just go through those videos. Definitely, it will help you to understand Scala in depth. Okay, is it clear, or any questions on that, gentlemen? So that's the idea about methods or functions. Okay, how to name, provide naming standard for methods or function. Okay, even trait also follows the same naming standard as class. Maybe I can just tell you for class or trait. We didn't still discuss traits. Don't worry. It is very easy to understand trait if you really master class. To master class, you don't need to do anything. First, you should be good with how to declare variables and how to declare methods. And if you are really good with that, then you can play with classes. There is nothing in that. Only thing is you should know how to put them inside class. That's all. Okay. So I had just briefed you the naming standards for you, so that you can follow it. Even if you don't follow the Scala people, Java people follow that, because many packages in Scala are imported from Java, so they follow a naming standard. So even it's good for you to follow, because tomorrow when you work in any project, it's recommended. If you don't follow naming standards, people don't allow you to write code as you like. Okay, that's the idea about this, gentlemen. Got clarity now about methods and classes. Next after that is naming standards. So finally, what is the point? Now you have clarity about how to declare method, how to declare class, and what should be there inside class. What are the naming standards? How to define class or trait, and how to declare method or function. Both are same. Don't ask me a question. What is difference between method and function? Sometimes people say like this. It's a funny answer. Still, if you want to just have some idea, if you put method function inside a class, they people call it as methods. But generally, I feel it's same, because I don't find too much difference. It's just only the way we call that names. That's all. Okay. So in that way, you don't need to care much about it. So now, once you know about class, let's take a small example for class example. Something like this, some class book. Inside that, we have to define properties of book and actions of book. Right now, we are not jumping into business logic. We are just implementing the fundamental way of writing your classes and objects. Once you are thorough with this, then I will teach you how to implement business logic in classes. Okay, that is very important. How to define methods in classes. Definitely, they are going to help you a lot, gentlemen and ladies. Okay, so Naina, Deepthi, Sureka, all of you, right? So that's the idea about class and object, how to define. Then we have to follow steps to implement classes and objects. First, understand basics properly. Then automatically you can easily master this programming. Steps to implement classes and objects. First one, step one, declare a class. So this is very important. You know the syntax, right? Could you just type in the chat box what is syntax for class? Right now, just now we had discussed all this stuff, right? Just type in the chat.
This conference will now be recorded.